What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Terror Table, a horror movie podcast that is presented by the Saskatchewan Podcast Network. I am one of your hosts, Mitch, and today I'm welcoming one of my best friends that I've made through this podcasting adventure. You have heard us talk about the fantastic EERIE International podcast on nearly every episode of our show, and today I will be joined by one of their hosts, David Hopkins, all the way from Indiana. If you're somewhat new to the show, to add a little context, us three at the Terror Table have struggled with Skype recordings in the past, and by struggled, I mean we tried once and it wasn't great. It wasn't a great experience, so we just stopped. But through the glory of COVID-19, I was forced to finally just figure this stuff out, and now here we are, like 20 episodes into recording entirely remotely, so I guess you could now say that I'm a tech genius. All bullshit aside, I've been so excited to record this episode with David. If any of you have ever developed a relationship with someone online who you have a lot in common with, or someone who you just know, if you lived in the same city or town, you'd be inseparable. That is David Hopkins and I. We talk at the very least a few times a week over WhatsApp, but this is the first time I was actually able to bring him on the show, and man, it was a blast. David is a professional comic book letterer, a fantastic podcaster, and honestly, an inspirational father, husband, son, and friend to anyone who's gotten to know him. I realize he would probably throw up if he heard me say any of this stuff, and that's why he refused to say it to his face, or if he's on the call with me. I just want to acknowledge he's just a great dude, and his knowledge on the things that he's passionate about seem to be endless. And one of those things that he is passionate about is the hit video game, The Last of Us, which is why I asked him to join me for the episode to discuss The Last of Us Part 2. We start this episode off like any other Terror Table or EERIE International episode by talking about what we've taken in recently within the horror genre. We may bend that a little bit today with discussions on a few TV shows that definitely are not horror, but you know what? I'm the one with the microphone, so you will listen to every goddamn word I have to say. I promise that will be the first and last Adam Sandler quote of the episode. But I will offer up a timestamp in the show notes if you're wanting to just jump right into our conversation on The Last of Us Part 2. But I'm giving you all fair warning now that this is a spoiler-heavy conversation on the game. We normally try to offer up spoiler-free reviews, but this one just seemed to be impossible to talk about without spoilers. The Terror Table will be back this coming Tuesday, July 7th, in which we will continue our World Horror Series with Kyle's foreign film pick, The Skin I Live In. But for now, I guess we can just get on with the show. Don't forget to check out our new website at theterrortable.com. Follow us on all social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And if you haven't yet, be sure to check out EERIE International. We love those guys dearly, and if you like what we do here, there's a good chance you're going to like what they do as well. But for now, I guess... enjoy this very special episode of The Terror Table.
If I ever were to lose you, I'd surely lose myself. Everything I have found here, I'm not found by myself. Try and sometimes you'll succeed to make this man of me. All my stolen missing parts I've no need for anymore, 'cause I believe, and I believe 'cause I can see our future days of you and me.
Welcome to the Terror Table, David Hopkins, my long-lost friend.
What's up?
my American friend, all the way from Indiana.
That's right.
How are things in Indiana?
In America, they're great. I mean, they're not. I'm in America, so it's not that great. Yeah, it's okay. COVID stuff here in Indiana, at least, seems to be spreading very, very, very slowly. So we've got that going for it. That being said, anytime I've left or gone anywhere, absolutely no one cares about social distancing or wearing masks at all. So, who knows? Maybe we'll have a Last of Us situation here soon, with Indiana as the epicenter. You never know. It's okay.
Well, maybe it'll start here and work its way to Indiana, because I guess Saskatoon has decided that COVID's just canceled now.
Yeah.
COVID's over now.
If you don't test it, then it's not there. So,
Yeah. Oh man, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that you guys have to deal with that shit.
Me too.
Yeah, that is brutal.
But I'm pumped to be back here with you, man. Like I'm trying to remember the last time. Actually, have I ever been on the show?
No, you haven't.
This is the first official one. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is super crazy because it's been like 3 years since we've become friends. Like our podcast, your podcast, EERIE International, and us become really good friends. And we were just we're dummies who we couldn't figure out Skype properly. And then sorry.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was going to say, even with that though, you've been on our show. We've crossed over our podcasts. You've been on bonus episodes. We had Diego and Boozy on. There have been multiple. I think Andy's been on Terror Table.
But Andy had to travel from Germany to be on the Terror Table.
That's true.
He had to sit he actually recorded in my condo. So
yeah, that's the point.
So that was pretty funny. And same with Lana. And yeah, I feel bad because even Bryson came here from Utah and he didn't even get to record an episode. But he also came here during our busiest week ever. So yeah, I think he understands. But yeah, man, this is super exciting. And I'm sorry we couldn't make it happen earlier. But now that this is a possibility for us, it's without a doubt you're going to be on here more often.
Yeah, awesome, man. No worries at all. I'm happy to be on.
Yeah, and it's just really cool that your first episode is going to be a video game episode, which is also our very first. This is our first time that we've ever recorded a video game episode. Have you guys done any episodes on video games? I can't remember.
We did, when we had Diego on, we did one that technically wasn't a video game episode, but it kind of turned into one because it was about the first season of Castlevania on Netflix.
Right, yeah.
And then it became a Castlevania video game episode after we talked about the show. And then we also did an episode over PT.
Right, yes, I do remember that.
Yeah, which kind of counts. I mean, it's a game, but it's not like a full-fledged game, but yeah.
That's a shame that it's not, because that was so amazing.
One of the biggest disappointments of my life.
Oh yeah, man. And there has been a lot of those for me as well. So
for sure.
All right, man. Well, let's get into it. Obviously we're going to talk about The Last of Us 2 at length. Last of Us Part 2. Before that, I just want to kind of catch up with my buddy. We haven't talked personally in a while. We text a lot. But what have you been up to in the horror world? Have you watched or read it or played anything else?
Very recently, no. And I mentioned it on the last EERIE International episode a little bit, which
I heard that.
Yeah, I know you listen, so some of the stuff's going to be redundant, but I don't know. It happens rarely, but it does happen sometimes where I'll get into a place where I just nothing sounds appealing, which is a textbook definition of depression. So, I mean, go with that if you want. In this case, it didn't feel so much like, the usual fun depression stuff as much as it was just nothing sounded that appealing to me. I have plenty to watch, but I would think about watching this particular movie or whatever, and it would be time to watch it. And then I would just play Call of Duty or something, which I don't view as superior to watching a movie as much as it was just I don't have to do anything with this. I can turn my head off. That being said, I think part of it might have also had to do with the fact that I did 27 hours of Last of Us 2, not super fast, but relatively within a week, which for me and the amount of time I have is a lot of gaming that, concentrated. Yeah. And I think kind of mentally I needed a break. Now, that being said, we did Night of the Living Dead last week for the show, and we're doing Diary of the Dead this coming week. We haven't recorded it yet. That's 4 movies later in Romero's series. So, or 3 movies later, I guess. 3 movies later. I, for whatever reason, got inspired to watch movies again. And I'm going to try, if I have time, I'm going to try to watch all of them up until Diary and then also Diary. We're only talking about Diary on the show, so I don't really need to. So I revisited Dawn of the Dead 2 nights ago, which I hadn't seen since not super long ago, but maybe, I don't know, 5-6 years it's been. And that was my entry point into the Romero stuff. And I got to that by way of Shaun of the Dead, because I wasn't always super into horror. I never hated it, but growing up it was kind of just something that would show up on my radar if it was an outlier type deal, and Shaun of the Dead was one of those. So maybe within a year later, I rented Dawn of the Dead when I was probably 15 and loved it. I had never seen anything like it before, and it's crazy watching it now. I'm 31, and so 15, 16 years later, watching it now, it's crazy because I kind of still have never seen another movie like it. I've watched tons of horror movies since then, and we've all discussed and analyzed and all that stuff, and It's still pretty crazy how that movie works. And like I don't know, maybe you feel this way too. Maybe I'm crazy, but like I feel like there's a lot of these classic horror movies that we forget sometimes, like not the mystique, but like the grandeur of it being like a Texas Chainsaw or an Exorcist or whatever overshadows the movie itself sometimes.
Totally.
And we tend to forget the like weird little things in the movie. Like
that's exactly what happened to me last time I revisited Dawn of the Dead as well. Like,
yeah.
Like textbook. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Which isn't surprising because if anyone's listened to either of our shows, we're basically the analog of each other. So not necessarily there is straight comedy in it, but like the kind of just quirky, funny moments in the soundtrack, like in the music, how much time is devoted to them like cleaning the mall up, which totally is a lot, but it's still very entertaining, and it's still like I think one of the big like draws of that movie is just the whole idea, and I think they do it even better than the remake does, which I guess isn't a surprising thing to say, but of like just the idea of it being fun to be in a mall. And that obviously spawned a lot of stuff too. They made a whole franchise of video games, Dead Rising stuff, off of that concept, basically. But yeah, it's just such a great movie. I mean, I don't know. I'm really interested to watch. I've seen Day of the Dead. I maybe have seen Diary of the Dead in college. I remember renting it. I don't remember much of it.
Are you skipping Land?
Or no. Sorry. Yeah, I'm glad you corrected me. There's Land, which I have seen, and haven't seen it probably since high school or college, and I liked it back then, but I haven't watched it in years. And then I'll do Diary, and then I'll definitely do, is it like Survival of the Dead or something? I don't remember.
Yeah.
The name. Is that it?
Is that the one that's on a plane?
I'm
trying to remember which, because there's one on a plane, isn't there? Because
I don't think officially. Like,
yeah, not out of Romero's stuff, but like it was okay. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, that's oh crap, what is the name of that? It's tough to remember too, because like sometimes stuff that's like homaging, I'll mix in my memory. So like sometimes I'll think of stuff from Left 4 Dead, the video game, which I played a lot of, which obviously homages all of these things, but is its own thing. I think the last one is like, I haven't seen it, but it's the one where there's like two families that are like warring over a piece of land or an island or something. I've heard it's not great, but
yeah. Wait, yeah, that's Survival of the Dead.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
So yeah, I got back into that, and I'm kind of like, my biggest thing right now is time. Like if I had more time, if I didn't have a kid and a job and a family, I definitely would be, and I was there, not that long ago, to where I could just go all in. And that's what I want to do right now, is to not even just binge the Dead series, but to binge just Romero's entire filmography. Because he's somebody that fascinates me, and I think he's, I don't know, another filmmaker that I think about a lot in a similar way as Romero is Tobe Hooper, which is someone who I feel like is known for. I think Romero has probably made more movies across the board that people tend to like, and not in maybe like an ironic way or in a horror fan way, than Tobe Hooper. But they both have this kind of weird thing that so far I've never really been able to nail them down. Like Carpenter, I feel like I get him, and I'm trying to think of other, like, off the
Wes
top of my head.
Craven.
Craven. Yeah, exactly. Like I there's still things that surprise me when I rewatch the movies, but by and large, I kind of get it. Romero and Tobe Hooper are two guys who I'm like, I don't get it. Like I don't know how the dude who made Texas Chainsaw made what's the one where the girl's naked the whole time?
Life Force. Like, great movie.
Like I don't get how.
Makes no sense.
Yeah, like I can't see the through line, and that's kind of how Romero has been for me in terms of the ones I have seen. So I don't know, going off on a crazy tangent, but that's been the only thing has been Dawn of the Dead, and it's still a great movie.
Yeah, that's exciting that you're redoing that. I love the episode that you guys recently posted on Night of the Living Dead. I fucking adore that movie. I'm excited to hear what you think of Day of the Dead as well, because I don't know if I missed something on the episode, but I saw Bryson and Dave Roberts, your other co-host, talking about Day of the Dead on Twitter.
That was Dave. Yeah, Dave said he didn't. It was his least. I think he said it was his least favorite of the three, like the original trilogy.
Yeah. I would agree with that, but it's also like still an amazing movie.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. Like I wouldn't disagree with Dave, but it kind of sounded like he didn't like it as much.
Oh, yeah,
I watched
it
for
the
first time probably 3 or 4 years ago, and I really dug it. I was into it.
Oh, it's so good. Romero's work is so great. It is totally all over the place in terms of quality. But like there's so much good shit to check out, like in regards to his filmography. Like, have you seen Martin, his vampire movie?
No, that's what I'm
Oh.
saying. Like I haven't seen Martin. I haven't seen The Crazies. I haven't seen what's the Jack's wife, but that's not the actual name of it. Season of the Witch.
Oh yeah, Season of the Witch. Then the Dark Half, Monkey Shines.
I haven't seen Dark Half. I have seen Monkey Shines. Funnily enough,
Yeah.
in high school, I picked it up. I didn't know it was Romero until years later, but I did watch that back then. Yeah, we had a listener who messaged me later who was like, "Yeah, Dark Half, you have to watch that too." I haven't seen that. There's Andy mentioned there's one. I forget the name of it now, but it's like the dudes who are like jousting on motorcycles and stuff.
Night Riders.
I think it is Night Riders.
Yeah.
It has those names. It's just like just vague enough to not no one can remember it. But
Exactly. Yeah. No. Oh man. Now that's what I want to do, because I rewatched. I went out of town with my boss a couple weeks ago just for a couple days, and he is not interested in horror movies at all. But just to, I guess, be a homie, he was like, "Hey, I brought Dawn of the Dead with me."
oh, wow.
I was like, "What? Really?" I was
Crazy.
like, "What are the odds that you have Dawn of the Dead?" And then it was the remake.
Yeah,
So I was like, "Oh, okay." But at the same time, that remake's also great. It is great, but it's obviously not as good. But it's that remake is so good, and same with the Crazies remake is good as well.
I like the Crazies remake. Now, yeah, I know. I don't know. I feel like modern horror fans are pretty divided on that. I saw that before I became like super deep into horror, and I was really into it. But yeah, I don't know. I always thought it was fun. I haven't seen the original to compare it, so
Yeah, it's
even just
definitely
that tangent to me.
A lot more Hollywood.
Yeah, I figured. I figured it was
But it's
a lot more
whatever.
polished.
Still, it's a fucking as far as Hollywood horror movies go, it's a great one.
Right. Yeah, I'm really interested to watch that original one, because that's one of the, and I mentioned this briefly on EERIE, but that's one of the things that fascinates me the most about Romero is that he made that movie alongside his zombie movies, like the Dead movies. Like here's this whole series and franchise that he has, and then he also made this other one that's not connected, but also, and I don't know, maybe you can tell me, are there differences with the zombies in that? Like, do they behave differently, or the rules different?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
The rules are a little bit different. But yeah, it's definitely the Crazies is like Romero's version is a lot slower.
Mhm.
So from what I know, like a lot of my friends that I've recommended it to in like recent years, they've been fans of the remake more so than the original. Actually, that's one that comes up a lot.
I mean differences in terms of the original Crazies from the original Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, like in terms of style, like the fact that he made a series of zombie movies and then also made another zombie movie that's not connected to those is so strange to me. But I don't really know. Like in the Crazies, are they still like your standard zombies as same as in Night of the Living Dead and stuff? Where it's like
they're
not?
different.
Okay.
Yeah, they're pretty slightly different.
Okay, gotcha.
But yeah, no, it's still a very cool movie. But even Land of the Dead, I wasn't crazy about it when it came out in high school. Like when I saw it in high school, I just wasn't into it at all. And the last time I revisited it after doing the whole trilogy again, I guess it's not a trilogy, but after I watched the original first three again and I revisited it, I actually enjoyed it a lot more this time around as well. So
yeah, I'm interested to watch. I had no depth of understanding about any metaphors watching it in high school, so it was very much just I know this is going to be gory, and it definitely had a sense of fun to it that I remember in terms of like the post-apocalyptic sort of vibe, and like isn't that the one where they have like the giant armored cars and stuff that have chainsaws and guns?
It was John Leguizamo.
Yeah, and Dennis Hopper, like it's
yeah,
crazy.
Dennis Hopper's just nuts in that movie. Well, I guess he's nuts in everything he's in, but
standard, yeah. I'm gonna have to find a good way to talk about it on the next episode, like all the other movies leading up to it, in a way that feels like I've covered them, but also then have to ignore all of them and try not to talk about it when we only talk about the fifth or the fourth movie.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah, no kidding. Guess what I've been doing?
What's that?
I'm very ashamed. I'm very ashamed about this, but dude, I'm just now watching The Watchmen.
Oh, the show?
Yeah.
Oh,
holy shit, man!
How far into it are you?
6 episodes.
Okay, so you're nearing the end. Yeah.
Yeah, I just watched the nostalgia episode.
Okay, so where she's going through the drug. Okay.
Yeah, holy shit, man! What a show! Like I'm a very, very big fan of like the comic book, graphic novel, whatever you want to call it. I know you always get picky about how people pronounce comic books on the show.
Picky about how some people talk about it.
But like The Watchmen, would you call that a graphic novel or a comic book?
Technically speaking, it's a comic. Well, they're all comics, right? So that's the broad sense. It was a mini series, like a 12-issue mini series. In modern times, people call those maxi series now, or limited series. But it was a comic. And then, but that being said, Watchmen is probably the biggest exception to the rule that exists in history in terms of people calling it a graphic novel when it technically wasn't done that way. So I get it. I think the biggest, like on all of the versions I have of it in paperback, on the back of the book, the biggest pull quote is from like Time magazine, and it's like the greatest modern graphic novel or something. Yeah. So it's pretty synonymous with that. But yeah, me too. I mean, it's Watchmen, so I mean, it's a high standard. But yeah,
it's a fucking great book. But the show is just blowing me away right now, and I don't know, man, just seeing Adrian Veidt fishing for fetuses is like one of the most wild things I've ever seen in my life.
Dude, imagine watching that show like when it came out, where it seemed like a sci-fi, superhero show, but also that was like, oh, wow, they're pushing some, not boundaries, but like they're definitely taking some current ideas and taking them to the next step. You're watching it now when a lot of those ideas are just actually happening.
Exactly.
Like,
it's so timely.
Amount of time that happened. It's not even like it was years ago. Like it was literally like what, 6
months ago, like 6-7 months ago. Yeah.
So it's crazy. I don't know. It's sad kind of, but also just, I don't know. It makes you, and that whole show too. I mean, obviously a lot of my perspective comes from the comic book world because I work in that industry, and like people, throwing a lot of crap people's way for enjoying it and watching it because of the whole Alan Moore rights controversy stuff that's happened, which if you don't know about, you can go look it up on Wikipedia. I'm sure it's got its own article. It's pretty fascinating, but the consensus seems to be that DC screwed Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons over with the rights. And so, I don't know, a lot of people in the comic book industry were trying to give each other crap for watching it or liking it because it was like, well, this is them just taking that intellectual property that they technically own, but kind of arguably stole and made this new thing. All of that aside, for me at least, if I'm not looking at that and just looking at the art, it's pretty hard to deny it in terms of what it is and what it does. And I'm going back now and at the gym. Oh, I'm only watching them at the gym, but I'm watching the Leftovers for the first.
Oh, so good.
Yeah. Not for the first time. I watched some of the first season with Amanda when it came out, and I read the book years before they did the show, so I knew the first season already from the book. But I'm in season 2 now, and I can tell. Like I liked what I had seen of season 1 back in the day, and I liked it a lot when I watched it this time. But I'd always heard people say seasons 2 and 3 are like where it really goes crazy good. And even just watching the first episode of season 2, you can already see all the Watchmen DNA, and not even just the actors that he reuses, but just the weird like stuff that you see that happens. Too. Yeah. And it's just like, I don't know what that means at all. And Watchmen's so great at that. And the score, like I'm biased because Nine Inch Nails is my favorite band, but Reznor and Atticus Ross's score is so crazy good. Like I think for so
I think
long.
I think this is one of their best ones.
I think so too. Yeah. For sure.
And I'm not a fan of them, but I'm a fan of their scores. Like I really enjoy, like, obviously the Social Network score, Gone Girl, with the dragon tattoo, all of those, they've been great. But this just seems like something different. Like it's so good.
It's amazing. I think you're right around, and this isn't a spoiler, but you're right around. They do a cover of a David Bowie song. Like a piano instrumental that's amazing.
Man, there's been a couple of those that have just been unreal. Like, it's so good. But I don't know. Yeah, like their whole, like they're going down a whole, they're doing like an alternate history type thing, like where like they're clearly referencing 9/11, but using the event of 11/2, and hearing the one character reference Spielberg's movie that won Academy Awards, where it had the little girl walking through Manhattan after the squid attack, but she's like wearing a red dress. I'm like, holy shit! Like, I don't know. I thought that was all like really clever and brilliant. Like, I'm so on board for it. And as soon as we're done tonight, Courtney and I are going to keep watching it. We're both in love with it.
That's awesome, man. I'm excited to rewatch it. I haven't told Andy this, but he is not like Andy on Erie International, my co-host. He's not a huge like physical media guy. Like, I mean, they own physical media, he and his wife, but like he doesn't run out and buy, new movies or shows when they come out or whatever. but this was one that he pre-ordered, like the set once it was releasing in Germany. Like he's really excited about it, and I haven't told him yet. But part of me is wondering, depending on how quickly or like how fast he moves through it, if he's watching it at a slower pace, I may watch it again while he's watching it, just to be able to talk to him about it week to week, or like episode to episode rather. Because it's been one that I've been wanting to rewatch for pretty much since it ended. Like I feel like more and more as I'm getting older too, like that's a sign for me of something that really makes a dent, is like if I finish something, if I have the urge right away to get back into it. I know that's something that has stuck into the amount of stuff I forget that I've seen now, like, you know,
totally.
a day later, I'll forget I watched a movie. Like,
also, you and I are both active. We're actively trying to seek out more than we probably ever have in our life, because we're trying to, you know, give people entertaining shows to listen to. We want to try and watch things so that people have something to listen to.
Yeah,
but that forces you to end up having to sift through some pretty forgettable stuff.
And that's horror too. I mean, like, I've never experienced a genre until I got super into horror that is just, I think probably more than any other genre, there's more bad stuff than good on a pretty wide margin. But that's part of the fun of it once you get into it too. And I think you start to figure out, even if something's bad, you start to see stuff that works.
That's like lots of the times the bad stuff is the good stuff too.
Yeah.
Like
then there's that.
Fucking Kyle Zervinsky, he just watched Stay Alive twice in the last month.
That's a video game movie.
Yeah, we did an episode on it like 2 weeks ago, and he already watched it again. It's like, man.
I was listening today when I was working. I was listening to a How Did This Get Made episode over Ninja 3: The Domination.
Oh yeah,
have you seen that?
I haven't. I just heard you talk about it.
Oh man, it made me want to rewatch it. Them talking about it, and it's one of those where it's just like there's a line that one of them mentioned that my friends and I would not stop quoting afterwards that I'd forgotten about. Where there's a sex scene involving V8, the beverage, in the movie.
I can relate.
Who can't? But there's the reason there's V8 is because the protagonist, she does not like that's her drink of choice. And the way that she tells the like male romantic lead of the movie that is, she says when he offers her a soda or whatever, she's like, "I don't use soft drinks," which is one of the weirdest things to ever, like, just say you don't drink soft. It's such a weird line delivery. And like those are the kind of moments that I live for in those sort of trashy, like fun movies. And Ninja 3: The Domination doesn't sound like it's a horror movie. Totally is. There's demon possession and exorcisms and all kinds of crazy stuff. There's also ninjas. So
yeah, awesome. Have you checked anything else out, or is it all me now?
I think it's all you, man. Like I've been reading things here and there. I started reading Bent Heavens, which is Daniel Kraus's newest book, which is kind of like as it's been promised, is like a gnarlier alien abduction kind of violent thing. Honestly, it sounds similar to a movie that you and I both liked, that we both saw for the first time recently. I'm trying to remember the name of it, from the Blair Witch dude. Altered, but I think that's
Altered. It is. No, it's Altered.
Yeah. What's the found footage vampire movie that's in like France or whatever? Is that Afflicted?
Yeah, and man, that's super funny because Boozy brought that up. He watched that this week. It's coming up on our next episode.
I haven't seen it in a while, but I remember liking it.
I've never seen it, but
they put on like GoPro cameras and like fly around and stuff. Anyway,
that sounds cool.
Yeah, but yeah, it reminds me a little bit of the premise of Altered in some ways, where they capture an alien and they're like, in this case, the protagonist of the book, her dad was abducted by he says aliens, and he disappears and no one believes him. And he had set up traps in the woods, and she's out. He's been gone, presumably dead for years at this point. And she has a lot of resentment toward her dad and what happened and everything. And she's out with her friend in the woods, and they come across one of her dad's traps that he had set up. You know, everyone thought he was crazy, and there's an alien in it. Like it captured one after he's gone.
Oh, wow. What's this called again?
It's either Bent Heaven or Bent Heavens. Okay. And Daniel Kraus, he's the dude who, I've always felt weird about this, but he works a lot with Del Toro. Apparently they went to dinner one time, and Del Toro was like, or Daniel Kraus was like, I've got this idea about this woman who falls in love with this creature that's in a lab. And Del Toro was like, I've got an idea like that too. And they talked about it, and then they left the dinner, and Del Toro made The Shape of Water, and Daniel Kraus like wrote a book, and they put Del Toro's name above his on the book, even though Kraus wrote the book himself. I don't know. It seems like it was pretty amicable, but he's the other guy. He's not credited in The Shape of Water in the movie whatsoever. I've always just felt kind of bad for him because then, of course, that's the movie Del Toro wins Oscars for. But
yeah, no kidding.
Anyway, Kraus, he's a good writer. He collaborated with Del Toro on that Troll Hunters show or Troll Hunters, whatever it's called, a Netflix show. And then he did a book called Rotters. That's a YA book that I read, and I really liked it a lot. And so once his new book came out, and to tie it back into Romero, he is finishing a book Romero had started writing before he died, which was another entry in his Dead series. And that
right, that's where I've known his. Yeah, that's where I know his name from. It's because I know about that book. Awesome.
So yeah, he's a cool writer. He's doing a comic coming up too. So he's one of the few people I've signed up for his mailing list. So I've been kind of following more of his stuff lately. And but yeah, other than that, that's mostly been it for me. So what have you been into?
That sounds cool, though. I'm going to actually probably Amazon that and pick it up because I need a new book to read.
I haven't finished it. Maybe it sucks. Like so far I'm into it, but we'll see.
Okay. If it sucks, I'll send you the bill.
All right. Sounds good.
One I'm going to give to you. This is one that I decided to talk about on this episode instead of the one with Boozy and Kyle, because I just feel like there's a better chance at you enjoying this or you having some sort of interest in it. Okay. But have you heard about the TV show Defending Jacob?
Yes. My friend Austin that I do Hideous Energy with sporadically, he really liked it. And he was talking, well, I think he really liked most of it. I was talking to him about it, and I only mostly know about it because of him. And then also the Zero Dark 30 guy, didn't he write it?
William Landay? No. It's because it's based off a novel by William Landay.
Not the book I'm talking about. I'll look it up while you're talking about it, but I'm pretty sure I think his name's Mark Bull. He also did
Mark Bombach.
Or Bombach. Okay, maybe I'm getting my people mixed up then. But yeah, I know Austin liked it.
He wrote Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, War for the Planet of the Apes, Total Recall. I don't see anything about.
This is not. I probably remembered Mark Bull correctly, and it's not Mark Bombach. So never mind.
Yeah,
but yes, I've heard about it, and I have Apple TV Plus because I bought an iPhone, so I have it for a year. And the only show I've watched is that Shyamalan show, so maybe I'll check this one out too.
Well, this is one that and I also could see this being something that it might be up your wife's alley as well. So it's something you guys might be able to watch together because this is definitely not a horror show. It's definitely not horror. But I do want to mention it because it's starring Jaden Martell, who played he's young Bill in It Chapter 1 and 2.
Oh, nice. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
So he's the kid in it, and then you have Chris Evans as he's the father. And Michelle Dockery, who I knew her from nothing, but it turns out she's famous for Downton Abbey.
Okay.
And so, of course, I've never seen that. I turned The Gentleman off. She's in The Gentleman. That was, okay. I thought that I was like 40 minutes into that movie, and I thought it was fucking awful.
Guy Ritchie has burned enough bridges with me that I don't jump into his new movies anymore.
God, I thought that this is by far his worst one. I thought the writing, I was like, man, this guy's so far up his own ass. I can't stand his stuff anymore, but especially that one. Anyways, Defending Jacob though, it's a really, really good show. This is just a true look at, and it's a really good look at true inner turmoil. It's like a fascinating study on adult human behavior and like what deep-rooted guilt and paranoia looks like from varying different angles and situations. So but Michelle Dockery, she stole the show for me. I thought she was fucking brilliant. I knew nothing of her. So I thought that I was like, that she seems like kind of a weird choice for the mom because she just didn't have much charisma. I just didn't see her bringing anything to this role, but man, did she completely proved me wrong because by I think episode 3 or 4, it's like, oh, she has this whole show on her shoulders. And I thought she was amazing in it. But it's without spoiling anything, it's definitely for fans of people like if you're into stories like Broadchurch. I think you and I are both fans of Broadchurch, hey?
Oh, huge fan, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to say this is as good as Broadchurch, but it's definitely, if you're a fan of Broadchurch, you'll get some enjoyment out of this. There's also obvious like Gone Girl vibes that are going through it, but it's one of those. It's a story about like Chris Evans is he's a defense attorney, and his son is named as the prime suspect in a murder that happened to a kid at his school, and it's all about him and his family trying to prove his son's innocence. But like throughout the show, you're questioning if he actually is innocent or not. And the kid, like with Jaden Martell, I thought he was a perfect casting as well. Like that kid, like I admit it, I like those It movies, but I wasn't blown away by his performance or anything like that. But this was a role that actually gave him something he had something to work with here. And I thought he killed it. Like he's
I didn't realize he was in it. That's cool. I even liked him in Knives Out when he's like that.
Oh
he's
yeah,
like the douchey like alt-right kid.
Yeah, no man, he's so good at it. That movie's fucking amazing.
Yeah,
I almost didn't watch that because I was a little stupid idiot fanboy. Like
we've
Last
all
Jedi
made
hater
like that. Don't worry about it.
But Defending Jacob, like at its best, it's moody, it's smart, it's intense and heartbreaking. But at its worst, it's definitely melodramatic. But it's never dull. But this is in lesser hands. This could have been completely forgettable or written off as like another soapy cliche family drama. But the writing and the actors elevate it to something devastating. And so it's one of those ones that it follows a lot of these tropes that we come to know from daytime TV that I'm sure everyone's parents, we grew up watching our parents watch, and we're like, why are you wasting your time doing this? Like, it's so obvious what's happening. And they completely subvert your expectations almost at every turn. There's times where it delves into that a little. I think I know if I think I can imagine what Austin's issues were with it.
I'll tell you off air since you've seen it. Yeah, because I don't, in case it's spoilery for people, but yeah.
Yeah, like it's pretty cool, but it's a sensational case fed to you in breadcrumbs, and it's dressed up in great acting. So it's really the actors that. Oh man, and J.K. Simmons is in the show.
Oh, nice.
He is so fucking good in this as well. And yeah, this is one that I actually thought of you. I do that a lot. I think of you. I think of you when I'm at work sometimes and I'm watching a show and I'm like, hey, David would like this. I think about you during sex sometimes.
I think we've both joked off air that it's the only way we can finish. So we're on the same page there.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, no, I do that a lot with you too. This is just getting so emotional. No, but what was the other thing I was going to say about this specifically? Crap, my mind just went blank. You threw me off guard with the romantic stuff. It does sound like something Amanda would like too. What I was forgetting was my real life wife. As I was going off down this rabbit hole of you and I together, she just finished watching Sharp Objects on HBO. Yeah. Was really into that. Yeah, and it sounded like one I probably would have liked too. So she loves the
man, if she likes Sharp Objects, she'll love this.
Okay. Awesome.
It's I personally think it's better. Like okay. I like Sharp Objects as well, but this, oh man, I was very surprised by how much I enjoyed Defending Jacob, because I thought this was one, especially with Chris. I don't think Chris Evans is a great actor. I like him, but I don't think he's great, and he's not great all throughout this show. He has a couple moments where he has to do some real acting, and I think he kind of stumbles a little bit. But
he's one of those guys that's really great at what he does, but not. Yeah, I'm with you there. I really like him, and I feel like strangely in some ways he's got some range in Snowpiercer, but even that is still pretty limited. But yeah, I'm with you. I like him.
Whenever he's angry, he just turns into Captain America, though. Like I don't. So it's hard. It's also hard to unsee that when he's been in so many of these Marvel movies. But either way, I give Defending Jacob a thumbs up. I really enjoyed it. And then I have one last one that I want to recommend to you that I watched on Sunday afternoon that was recommended to us by Adam McDonald when we had him on the show. Oh, nice. Director of Backcountry and Pyewacket. He recommended The Survivalist, which is on Amazon Prime. I saw
you log that, yeah, and I saw you gave it 4 stars, which always makes me take a little screenshot to remember it for later. I've got a few people on Letterboxd. If it gets like a 4 or higher, I'm like, okay, mark that one down, because those you don't get. Oh shit,
man! I give a lot of 4s out. I've been thinking about recently. I'm like, man, I give a lot of 4s. But I've been watching some good shit.
That's it though, man. Like I was thinking that recently too, and I logged Night of the Living Dead. I looked at my last viewed movies, and it was that, Horror Noir, The Vast of Night, and Sunshine. And I was like, well, it's just 4 great movies. Like,
yeah, exactly. They're all 4s.
So yeah, cool. Okay. Yeah, I don't know anything about it, but I saw you and Courtney liked it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. This is just like an ultra realistic and gritty survival thriller. It's incredibly realistic in the violence, and it's another one where it's just 3 really strong performances. Mia Goth, do you know who she is?
I know the name. Yeah, I'm sure I've seen her and stuff.
Yeah, she's great in it. And then there's the old lady from Mandy. I feel bad calling her that, but I don't know how to pronounce her name proproperly. I'm so bad with that.
Gainsborough, Andrea Gainsborough, or something like that.
No, it's Olwen Foray.
So not
no
Mandy.
way. No, no, not Mandy, but she is in Mandy. She's
Gotcha.
She plays Mother Marlene in Mandy.
Okay.
But yeah, she's in The Survivalist. And then I actually need to look up this because I hadn't seen the main actor, and Martin McCann. Yeah, what else has he been in here? Okay, 71 Caliber, which is a movie that was recommended from Elric Kane on the Shockwaves. Rest in peace. But yeah, I still haven't watched that one, but I wanted to. He was in The Pacific, the sequel to
Band of Brothers.
Yeah.
So when did this movie come out?
It came out in 2015, and yeah, it's I'm just going to read the IMDb synopsis so we can get onto The Last of Us. But it's in a time of starvation, a survivalist lives off a small plot of land hidden deep in the forest. When two women seeking food and shelter find his farm, he finds his existence threatened.
I remembered when this came out. Yeah, now that you read that, the two women thing, yeah, I didn't see. I obviously haven't seen it, but I totally remember this coming out. It played at we have like a little art house theater. We did over not too far from my house, and it was playing there. And I thought about going to see it, but I didn't know anything about it. But I remember that now. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna watch this. Did you guys rent it, or was it streaming somewhere?
It was streaming on Amazon Prime.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
So it's probably available where you are as well. But yeah, I don't know. It's very slow. I would kind of compare it to It Comes at Night. From what I remember, you liked that movie enough.
Yeah.
I would say, like, obviously, I think I like Survivalist more. They're different in their own ways, but this is just like, it's really, really realistic in the sense that you can just feel that the world is dying from starvation. And it's only in like one setting. Like they're just at his little farm, and then every once in a while an event will happen, and it's weird how big the world feels when it's just three actors. Like that's where I commend it.
It's so cool when people pull that off. Like it's such a hard thing to do, and I think so many writers think that they're doing it when they're writing a lot of backstory for their characters that you don't see or hear about. But it's got to be a difficult thing to pull off. What's the one? The Headhunter was that way too.
Yeah,
where there was so little that you see, but you could tell that this was like a Skyrim-sized world.
Yeah,
but you're never getting any, other than just little glimpses here and there. You don't get that scope, but it's there and you can feel it. It's so cool.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, this one, so I just thought it's another really interesting look at the human condition and what it takes to survive, and like when you're actually facing starvation. And it's one of those ones that makes you sit and ask questions like, would I be able to do that, or would I just literally off myself? Because it's like you would have to, there's certain things that you would have to do. Obviously, not everything that he does in the movie you wouldn't have to do, but there's some pretty uncomfortable scenes, but it's definitely, I thought it was great. Awesome. And yeah, the other one, this one I watched and I talked about a couple weeks ago. I'm just quickly, this is just for you, but I talked about it a couple episodes ago. I know you're a little bit behind, but you should also watch These Final Hours.
I've seen that. Yeah.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I liked it a lot. When I got into horror in a big way, which was maybe 6 months to a year before we started doing EERIE International, it was Andy was feeding me a lot of different movies to watch, and because I had been friends with him for a long time before that, and Dave too. But that was one of the movies he told me about, which is kind of, I don't know if it's a horror movie, but it's at least in the realm.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen it since then, but I remember. Yeah, I liked it quite a bit.
That one blew me away.
Pessimistic movie, but good movie.
Totally. Yeah, when I talked about it on the show, Andy messaged me like the next day being like, I've never heard anyone else talk about that movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, I loved it. But yeah, that's everything I got. So we can just pretty much hop right into The Last of Us Part 2. But you ready to do that?
I am so ready. I've been waiting for this moment for a long time.
Let's do it, boy.
I feel so extraordinary. Something's gotta hold on. I got this feeling on the motion, a sudden sense of liberty. I used to think that the day would never come. I see the light in the shade of the morning sun.
right, so we can finally do it. We can finally openly talk about The Last of Us Part 2.
Well, I guess I should ask now. What are we doing with spoilers?
Let's go all in.
Okay. Well, I mean, I figured if we weren't, I was going to demand that we did, even if it had to be off air, because I have talked to no one else about this game, and I've been dying to.
Yeah.
But I didn't know if we were going to do like anything before we did a spoiler one or what, like whatever.
I think that this is one of those rare cases where it's actually nearly impossible to talk about it without spoilers. Like, I guess we can say off the gate if we liked it or not, but I don't know how good that.
I would say that's a pretty good indication that this is a spoiler warning. So if you don't want it spoiled, you should probably turn the episode off now and come back to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're better. I think you're up to date. You're more up to date with the video game world than I am. Even though, like, I know you said you don't get to play video games all the time, and like when you do, it's pretty rare, and you get to you put sinking 27 hours into a video game in a week is rare.
Very well. Yeah, definitely these kinds of games. Yeah, rare.
Yeah, but you were obviously a big fan of The Last of Us Part 1, as I'm sure anyone listening to this was.
Yeah,
as well.
In the similar way that I tell people Drive is my favorite movie of all time when they're, people ask that question, and just so I have an answer. The Last of Us is the answer I give for favorite video game of all time, the first one. So yeah, definitely one of my faves.
Okay, so I don't know how you want to go about this. Like, I've avoided pretty much everything online, so I know that the whole world has exploded over this game, but I don't know entirely what about. I know, obviously, some people had some issues with like we'll get into like the issues that people had with Ellie's arc, but I don't know anything beyond that. I avoided all spoilers at all costs. Like, I think you said that you had some pretty heavy stuff spoiled for you before you even played the game. Hey? Like, now you can tell me what that was.
I did. I didn't know exactly how. So
you knew Joel was gonna die?
I didn't know if what I read was real or not. So that was part of it for a while. So ultimately, I did know that Joel was going to die, but I didn't know that until it happened, if that makes sense. Because I had read something in a comment, and it was in a context where I was like, I don't know if that's real or if it's someone trolling. So once I saw that, I bailed. I was like, okay, the internet's officially not safe for me to be anywhere at this point. And so I didn't see anything after that. But the way that the comment was true, but like with a lot of stuff with this game where people are like review bombing it and stuff when it came out, it was from someone who had watched a leak, had no idea of the context of it, and just posted something to try to spoil stuff for others. So what I had read was that someone hit Joel over the head with a golf club and killed him, which does happen. Now, I assumed that once I started getting into the game, that was going to happen like at the end or like midway or something like that. I also didn't know if maybe that person, because it was a girl's name, but I didn't remember the name. So I wondered if maybe it was Dina that would like if it was going to be some sort of like she was secretly with Ellie because she's trying to get to Joel. I had no idea. So it ultimately didn't really ruin anything because I didn't know what the context was. And yeah, it happens in the first like hour. So that's out of the way right away. And then the only other thing I saw was something like it was someone that was pissed off that they had finished the game, and they were like, it's funny reading it now. They were saying it now, but they were like, The Last of Us Part 2 is like playing a game, a version of Super Mario Brothers where a Goomba kills Luigi at the beginning of the game. You travel the Mushroom Kingdom to find and kill the Goomba, and then at the end you give them a high five and go home instead of killing them. And it was someone that was pissed off, which again, beat for beat, kind of true, not exactly, but it was someone that was pretty bitter with it. So I didn't know what exactly that would mean. Now, all that to say,
I just want to say though that you mentioned something important to me is that I want to say like just right out the gate, I was so impressed by the plumbing in this video game.
Really?
I could not.
I know that could be a real thing. I don't know if you're joking.
I could not believe that most of the shit was done to code. And like, I'm dead serious at the
I
beginning.
know you would know, so that's why I can't tell if this is a joke.
Yeah, no, I'm actually dead serious, but unfortunately it comes out as a joke. But you know, in the past, video games haven't been the nicest to us plumbers. Like Super Mario Brothers, it's that
That's
shit's just not real.
A big middle finger to your profession, Super
Exactly. Yeah. But so it was nice to see that. And
it honestly doesn't surprise me, just because like that's one thing we can get out of the way now. Like on a technical level, pretty much at this point in time, I don't know that there's a better game in terms of like what they pulled off with the graphics, with the details of the world, with like the little touches of the way, even just like the way the physics of the ropes work. I read an article today, or a series of tweets, where another game developer was shocked at how much riding a horse felt like riding a horse in terms of the vibration, like the haptic feedback in the controller. Yeah. So like top to bottom, the amount of time and money and like professional level creators involved in this is insane. Like
down to every single little detail, even like the new like having the ability to play the guitar too was such a strong addition to the game. Like I taught Ellie how to play Wonderwall.
Real weird. Did you notice that? Like,
yeah, she does.
Plays it as a bar chord, which was so strange to me. But other than that, no, absolutely. So you say that as a joke, kind of, but also serious, and I absolutely believe you that the plumbing in this game would be up to code.
Oh man,
they had someone in charge of that. Like that's
at the very beginning of the game when Ellie's leaving with, I think she's leaving with who is it? Was it Steve? It was Steve.
Starts with a J. Crap, I forgot his name. I just played it.
Yeah, I know it's been a couple days, but
their friend.
But she's leaving. Jessie, yeah, she's leaving with him, and I accidentally like interacted with the door, so she grabbed her bag and she's getting ready to go. I'm like, hold up, I want to check out this wood stove. This shit's impressive, like, because it's like it's all vented out properly. It's like, and also like it's kind of like in It Comes at Night. That was like one of the first times I noticed that, where I was just like, man, this is like how they would have to rig up their plumbing in the apocalypse. Like that's
awesome.
Yeah,
I don't have any knowledge of that stuff, but it makes me. I think it's awesome that you know and that you saw that. Like,
I think it's an interesting detail that they paid attention to, that because like that's just, you know how nitpicky I can be.
Oh yeah, like, me too. Yeah, I totally get it.
So like seeing like how everything's all rigged up in there, and how they found a way to, obviously there's still plumbers alive, so they probably did it, but it's cool. Like I thought that was amazing. Obviously the whole game amazed me, but
that's one thing I've been doing. I've been playing it on New Game Plus on hard right now, and here and there. I'm definitely not playing it at the same pace, but that's one of the things in that town area at the beginning in Jackson. I've been like, when you walk through the town, the first time I played it, I went with the pace of the game, of the narrative, of like walking with Jesse and them talking and everything. This time I just bailed on Jesse and just started walking around and looking at stuff. And I found Gustavo Santo Alaya, however you pronounce his name, the composer. He's in the town square playing a banjo, like stuff I hadn't noticed, or at least it very much looks like him, like an homage they put in the game of him. Noticing all these little details that you don't see, and they're not even really there for you to see. It's just to be lived in, and that stuff is insane. But before, I want to know, did you like the game? Is it thumbs up, thumbs down? What'd you think overall?
Oh my god, man, I fucking loved it. Like I loved.
I didn't know if I wanted you to hate it so that we would have a livelier discussion, or if I wanted you to love it like I did so that we would be on the same page. I'm happy either way.
Yeah, I didn't know, because like you were giving me absolutely nothing when I was trying to get something out of you. So I was like, man, did David not? Is he one of the guys who didn't like this, or is he gonna bitch about the like, because it's very unconventional storytelling for a video game. It's unconventional for a video game in almost every way, and that's what's so brilliant about it, man. Like I saw it being compared to Pulp Fiction today in the narrative sense, and I'm like, man, that's spot on. Like this has got to be the first time this is the first time for a lot of things in a video game. Yeah, and I think so too. Even Courtney hates watching me play video games. Obviously, what girlfriend wants to watch their boyfriend play video games? But she would like come into the room sometimes, and she would just stand there and stare. And she was just so roped up into it. And like when I finished it, she like had to come out and like watch the final scenes with me, or like ask me what she missed and everything. And it's amazing. Like,
oh man,
it's a video game.
I totally agree. I was hesitant going into it because it's good that you've avoided everything online right now. I read an article on Polygon yesterday that was literally about how game is an impossible. I think that the headline was something like The Last of Us Part 2 is a minefield to talk about right now, or something like that, where it was just like it's no matter what you think of it, it's kind of impossible to talk about it. And there's all kinds of crazy drama between people involved with the game, fighting with journalists about things that they said or didn't say. And then there are people that review bombed the game, just like has happened with a lot of movies, where they whether it's because they hated the stuff that they saw out of context in the leaks and they haven't even played the game, or if it's because they're bigoted and they hated the LGBT stuff or the trans character, or even just Abby being not a quote unquote feminine like female game character, like being this like crazy like ripped sort of masculine, like strong character in that sense, and people having a problem with that. Like, it's all over the place. And even if you like the game, so much has gone, honestly, dude, and I'm not like, I know that there's some history here and I promise I'm not bringing it up. So put aside everything what this franchise is, put that aside. And just in terms of the discourse, it reminds me so much of The Last Jedi, where it's something that, and obviously that's different because it's Star Wars, and Star Wars is something different to everyone. And that's a variable wild card in that thing that you always are going to have. But it reminds me so much of that, where people who really loved the movie, there were absolutely people that were being very like highbrow, pretentious, elitist about liking the movie and saying like, oh, well, if you don't like the movie, you don't appreciate good art. Then there were people on the other side of it that were super pissed and hated the movie and called it like horrible fan fiction where they ruined characters. Like it, and I know for both of us, and we landed on different places with that movie. Like for both of us, by the time or what's it called? The last one? Not Return
Rise of Skywalker.
Rise of Skywalker. By the time that one came out, even on that movie, which we were on different sides of, you and I both had the same reaction, which was like, man, I don't want to talk about or watch Star Wars for a while. Like,
yeah, that's where I'm still there.
Me too. Like I dug Mandalorian. I think all of us pretty much did. But other than that, like I've just taken an extended break from it.
Yeah, and the world ruined it more for me than the actual movies did.
Yeah, no, totally. And I've had this conversation to look forward to. I haven't talked to anybody else. I've been excited and looking forward to talking with you about it. But reading stuff online, it's just insane, man. Like the amount of people that are, and it sucks because I definitely am going to side with the people that like the game because I think it's pretty great, and it is frustrating. It's got to be super frustrating for the people at Naughty Dog, and especially like Neil Druckmann, the creative director and writer, one of the co-writers, who I heard him on a podcast talking about how, like, the thing that's the most, they knew from the beginning, they were like, we know this game's going to piss some people off. Like, we kill Joel at the beginning. Like, we give you 10 hours with Ellie, and then we force you to play as Joel's killer for the second half of the game and make you sort of like her and understand her. Yeah. And then have all of this stuff that happens, which I thought was honestly brilliantly done.
Totally. Absolutely brilliant.
And yeah, and we can get into those details too. But he's like, Druckmann said, he's like, we knew that was going to happen. Like, this is by design. This is going to be a divisive game, and there's going to be people that love the first game that are going to hate the second game. He's like, what's frustrating for us right now is that that stuff leaked, and now so many people are writing the game off that otherwise would have played it and would have been challenged by those things and potentially would have really liked the game, but they're never giving it a chance now because they just see, oh, Joe gets killed, and then you have to play as the killer. That sucks. I'm never playing that game. And I do think that is a huge bummer because even for me, like, before this game came out, I played and beat Last of Us 1 on every difficulty level except for Grounded, which I was in the process of doing before Last of Us Part 2 came out, and I didn't finish it in time. I watched the feature-length documentary about the game twice, once in the weeks before it came out. I played it while I was working. The official podcasts have listened to all of those episodes. I watched the one night live thing that they did. I have the art book. I have the comic. Like, literally everything I can find about this game, I've taken in and read and everything else. And even for me, playing this game, and I'm going into it as probably as biased as you can get. When it switched over and I had to play as Abby, I didn't want to play as Abby.
No, yeah. At first, you really don't want to.
I didn't have like a strong reaction of like, no, I want to kill her. Or like, I didn't have that sort of reaction necessarily, but I I didn't want to leave Ellie. I was so invested with playing with her that I was like, man, I don't want to play it. Like, I know what they're trying to do. Like, I know what they want to give me, like, perspective, because we go back to the beginning of day one of Seattle. Like, I get where they're going, but I didn't want to do it. And then by the time that was over, I was like, oh, crap, I like Abby.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I like Lev. Like, I like these characters. And I think, like, you and I love this sort of subgenre of film too, which is these like crime revenge thrillers. And there's so many great ones out there. And this to me fits in perfectly with a lot of the best of those, especially the ones that are messy and are done by someone. Like, I love a good revenge movie that's just a straight up revenge movie, you know, that's like a John Wick or something like that.
Yeah,
I love those too. But I also love Blue Ruin. Like, Blue Ruin's one of my favorite movies in that subgenre. And that's like, I'm assuming you've seen that, right?
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah. And it's like, that's a messy movie. Like, it's not quite as, I think, like, complex and miniseries-esque as Last of Us Part 2, but it's a movie that's like, it's not fun. Like, it's just this like sad movie that all these people's lives are ruined, and you're watching it and you're on Macon Blair's side, but by the end of it, you're also just kind of like hoping, you're exhausted. You're like hoping that it can end. And I think this fits into those kinds of stories so well.
I agree as well, but I think that it actually, like, it totally does fit in that. But like the first game, it subverts those expectations of what, and obviously I know you've probably you caught onto this as well, but like the game isn't even a revenge game by the end of it. Just like the original The Last of Us, it was all about trying to get Ellie he was trying to get her help and get to the Fireflies and everything. And then it turns into a completely different story. And it's more so about his grief and him dealing with the loss of his daughter. Yeah. And then this one, it does the same thing. And I think it ends, I'm really excited to talk about what we think about the ending, like the very, very end. Yeah. Because I have some theories, but because this can't be the end of it, obviously. It's funny because also this was a game that I didn't want because I'm
not sure anybody did. Yeah.
No, because I don't think anyone did, because it's one of those things that's like, man, you made a perfect game. There's nowhere to go but down from there. And I don't know how you feel about this, because I know obviously I think you've proven to be the best person I could possibly talk to about this, because I haven't paid attention to 80% of the stuff that you were just talking about. Like, I would love to, but I never got the art books. I haven't listened to the podcast. I did watch the feature length documentary when it came out with the game, like back in the day, like I think 2015 around then. But I haven't seen it since.
Which I highly recommend people watch. Even if you're just like a pretty mild fan, it's a great. It's called Grounded, and it's on YouTube for free.
Yeah, I definitely, I'm gonna watch it again before I play through this again, which is so weird that like, I do think if there's one single negative I could say about the game, it's that I think I have this conversation with the guys on episode that's coming up when we talk about The Skin I Live In, but just because you don't want to watch a movie all the time doesn't mean that it's not a fucking incredible movie. That means it did its job. Like it like, just because it's not like this game is fun to play, but at the same time it's so heavy and it's so emotionally exhausting that it's not one that I didn't want to go back and play it from the beginning, right at the beginning. You did that though, hey?
No, that's what I was gonna say. I'm with you. I didn't, not right away. I'm playing Persona 4 Golden now, which is if you know anything about that game, it's a very bright.
Yeah, you need a little bit of a palate cleanser.
Pop, yeah, and it's a big game, so, but it's still very, very, very different tonally. And then as I started listening to more and more episodes of the official podcast that's coming out, which I also highly recommend. It's probably, along with, oh man, I'm glad I just remembered this because you will also really love this. There's only been 2 like officially licensed podcasts I've ever listened to in my life that have been great and haven't been just like extended commercials for the product or everyone's just each other. Like, obviously these podcasts are very positive because they're not going to have people talking crap about it on the official licensed podcast, but the official Last of Us podcast is fantastic. It's so good. A new episode just came out this morning. They're going through the first game beat by beat, and then they're going to start going into the second game. And they're talking with Druckmann, Ashley Johnson, Troy Baker, basically all the main big people that are involved with the games. The other one is the official Watchmen podcast. You have to listen to that one, dude.
Oh, awesome.
It's the guy from, and I know you liked this show too. It's the dude who made the Chernobyl series.
Yeah, I listened to the Chernobyl podcast.
Okay, so it's probably similar. He's interviewing Lindelof, and they do one episode for every 3 Watchmen episodes. There's 3 of them total, and it's very, very good.
Okay, that's awesome.
But yeah, I had to take a break too, and then as I was listening to the podcast, then I was like, all right, I want to get back into it because I think I'm with you. I think the gameplay is extremely fun, and that's one thing that I always irked me a little bit, especially right now. A lot of the conversation around the game is people referring back to the first game and saying like, "Oh yeah, that was a game that had a great story and like not that great gameplay."
Man, I just
totally
replayed. Yeah, I just replayed it. This was my first time replaying it on the PlayStation 4, though. I played it twice on PS3, and then I played through it. I think you actually inspired me to play through it again because you talked about it on EERIE, and I was like, I was laid off because of COVID and had nothing to do, so I was like, fuck, I should play through The Last of Us again before The Last of Us 2 comes out. And I did, man, and I totally disagree. I think that game is so beautifully crafted in every way. I think the gameplay is awesome in that game.
Yeah, I agree.
But with that being said, one other positive about Abby is I personally feel that the game feels the best when you're controlling Abby.
Yeah,
like I think some of the gameplay is the best when, like, the addition of the crossbow too was such a strong addition. Like, I love that weapon. I think she's such a strong character, and you feel it's cool that you feel the difference between her and Ellie.
Yeah, no, you absolutely do, and the first game's that way too. Like actually, and the only reason I even thought about this is because the podcast came out this morning about the winter section of the first game, and they're talking about that reveal in the first game where you are playing as Joel the entire time, and you watch that cutscene with Ellie hunting that rabbit, and suddenly the camera isn't moving anymore, and you're like, did the game freeze? And then you realize that you're playing the game and you have to control her, and as soon as you do, you realize like she moves differently, and you know there's a swiftness to her that Joel doesn't have, and you have to play a little bit differently as her. And
she doesn't aim as well.
Right. Yeah, and you're absolutely right with Abby. Like she plays closer to Joel a little bit in terms of like she's got the strength that Ellie doesn't have, and you know she's able to take down infected in a different way. I'm doing what the game did and refusing to say zombie. But then I think that piece of design specifically that you're talking about with Abby is so important for multiple reasons. One, I think from a narrative perspective, and they touch on this in one flashback where she lifts, I forget his name now, Owen, up through who is played by Patrick Fugit. Did you know that? I didn't know that.
No, what? Oh, wow. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah. She lifts him up through like a window. And he's like, oh man, you're getting stronger or whatever. Like they mention that in the game, but what that is there for narratively is this is a woman who, after her dad is killed, she devotes everything mentally, emotionally, and then physically to killing him. So she's just completely transforming her body so that she can kill this guy at some point. So it serves that point narratively, but then from a design perspective too, like it's setting that feel up for her so that when the storylines do reconverge and you're back in front of Ellie, I don't know what you expected, but I expected to go back to Ellie at that point, and you don't. So then you're now fighting Ellie.
Oh man, I hated that.
You feel conflict. Yeah, it feels so bad and weird.
Oh dude, I hated having to sneak up behind Ellie and hit her and stuff like that. Because I'm like, no, fuck. I'm like, yes, I like you. I get it. I like you both now, but fuck off. Like, I'm not. Don't put me in this situation.
That was one of my favorite sequences in the game because, in a weird way, because I felt discomfort the entire time. But I felt genuine fear at attacking Ellie because I knew that Abby is way stronger. And she proves that in that scene. She beats the piss out of Ellie. And every single time she hits her in the face, it feels like she's going to kill her. It's so gnarly. But then on the opposite side of that, and this is one of the things I wrote down in my notes, that got me so excited was there was one point where I was sneaking around and suddenly I exploded. And I realized that Ellie had set a trap.
Oh, yeah.
I had a giant smile on my face, dude. Like, because I was like, I know that's how I played. Like, that is
you get her, kid.
Like, that was so cool that the game turned to that mechanic on me because I don't know how many dudes I killed with those trap bombs as Ellie.
Yeah, no kidding, hey.
So, oh man, that's like a little microcosm glimpse of this game, and they expand on that, and then I was scared that the game was going to end around there. I got worried. I was like, ugh, this game has been amazing, but I don't know how I feel about, like, I thought it was going to end with her and Dina on the farm, and with JJ, and that was going to be the end of the game. No. And one of my favorite moments in the game is when she goes to get that is it a sheep or a lamb or something?
Oh my god, man! I was a fucking. I know I say this a lot, but I was a puddle. Yeah. That affected me so hard. She goes and tries to get the sheep out, and she has the PTSD.
There's just one silent like image flash of Joel's dead body, like his face, and that killed me, man. Like that. Oh, man. I paused the game and wrote that down immediately so I could remember to talk about it here. And like her dealing with PTSD, I thought was so well done. And like that's one thing I've seen a lot of people be critical of is like, well, she didn't, why didn't she just go kill her and blah, blah, blah. And why isn't she a changed person if they're going to go that route? And the thing I got, and I'm going to sound real pretentious and be like, I got this before I heard them talk about it. But literally was my take and was confirmed later by Druckmann and Ashley Johnson. It just feels like she doesn't know any other option. Like she's got this PTSD and it is destroying her and her life. And basically when Tommy shows up, who is another great scene because Tommy in the first game and in this game is pretty likable until the last time you interact with him, and he's kind of just a total dick. Like he tells her, I found Abby, blah, blah, blah. And I got the sense with Ellie going that it wasn't so much that she still craved revenge. I mean, that was maybe part of it, but also she's just so messed up that like maybe this will stop it. Like maybe she's wondering like, if I can do this, maybe the PTSD stuff will end. Maybe the nightmares will end. Maybe the stuff
that's exactly what I took from it as well.
Yeah, I felt like that was pretty sure. I'm glad you thought the same thing too, because what's great, and that's another thing, and I'm going to stop talking in a second, so I'm talking way too much, but there's so much symmetry and mirror imaging happening within this game and then against the second game. But even that journey for Ellie, you've already gone through with Abby. So you've already seen Abby go through her nightmares, and you've already seen Abby post-killing Joel and realizing it didn't help her. It didn't change anything. Her nightmares didn't go away. Like, she had to find some sort of new thing to basically find, I guess, like redemption in a way, which is where Lev and that stuff comes in. But, man, so good. All right, I'm going to stop talking for a little bit.
No, man, don't ever stop talking. Don't ever stop. But no, I pretty much mirror everything that you just said. Like, I just thought all of that was brilliant, but it's it's impossible to say right now, but like what I was leading up to before we got off on this tangent was that I think that this is without a doubt a better game than the first one, but I don't at the same time it's kind of like Kill Bill 1 and 2 are both the same movie, like it's just
I've struggled with this too because what I've told people who have asked me about it, because I haven't talked to anybody in depth like we're talking right now, but I've had friends ask me how I liked it and how it stacked up and everything. And I've told them the same thing, which is like, I think you can make a strong case that it's a better game than the first one. It's tough. I know exactly what you're saying, because I hesitate to be like, it's a better game. Because then by default, I would have to be like, it's my favorite game. Because the first one was that.
Well, and then it sounds like you're shitting on the other, like you're even slightly saying something negative with the other one, and we're not at all.
We've all sat with the first game for literally years.
Yeah.
And this game is like 2 weeks old. The only other thing I've told people around me, and I might have said this on EERIE, that in a weird way it reminds me of is the Raid 1 and 2.
Yes.
The first game and this game, and it's not a perfect comparison because I think the first game has a ton of thematic and character depth in a way that the first Raid movie doesn't necessarily have, which is fine because it's not necessarily supposed to. But one of the crazy things about the Raid 2 when you watch that is suddenly it's this like 2.5 hour crime epic, and you're seeing all these families and crime organizations and their histories and flashbacks, and it still has the stuff you loved about the first one, but it's way more dense and way more character driven. And I love the Raid 1 and I love the Raid 2. And in some ways it almost makes me not want to compare the games, just because the first one is as linear as it gets. It's A to B, in literally a line that you're walking with Ellie in the game, which is not a criticism. It's a fantastic game. We've all, been on the same page with that. The second one I think it's going to take a while before we can kind of really process every piece of it. And then like to compare to the first one is kind of unfair because to have a game like this that's about 30 hours long for a campaign is crazy. It's a huge game. So I think it's without a doubt going, just like the first one was, this is going to be a revolutionary game. It set a new bar for what you can do with storytelling in video games. And like I think it's both safe to say that neither of us have experienced a story in the way that we have in either of these games. But yeah, I think that they had the world on their shoulders with after releasing such a strong first installment, and then I honestly think that they almost made the right decisions at every single turn. And I don't want to sound like one of those guys who's just like, being hyperbolic and just blowing it at every corner as well. But I truthfully just love everything about this game. I was blown away at every turn. And even just like when you were just talking about, like when you realize that you're going to have to play as Abby, I was just like, well, fuck. I said to Courtney, because she came into the room and I was playing as her. She's like, whoa, did Ellie just get like super ripped? I'm like, no, I was like, these assholes are making me play as the fucking person who killed Joel. This guy he's my dad now. Joel's like my real dad now. And the same thing happens at the end, at the very, very end. Because I love that whole sequence in California where you're fighting the rattlers, and that's a cool glimpse into the universe that you don't normally see, which is or in their universe specifically. You've seen it in other properties, but the dudes that are really, really twisted, where they're messing with infected. And I loved how you could unchain infected and let them, attack the people that are taunting them and stuff. I thought that stuff was really cool.
Oh, that was awesome.
After you get through all of that, then it's flipped, and then you're playing as Ellie, and the whole time you're just like, stop punching Abby, she's leave her alone, she's changed, and you've had this, and it's
weird. It's weird, man, because that whole scene with Joel's death is one of the most traumatic things in any video. It's got to be the most traumatic thing I've experienced in a video game. I was crushed, and I had no idea that was happening. I thought when you're breaking into that cabin and you're hearing Joel, I was like, oh, she's going to rescue him without a doubt. That's going to happen. And then when she doesn't, and when you find that they're gonna they're fucking killing the main character, and he's now Joel's on the cover of Sony PlayStation boxes. He's a main character now, and it's just and to kill him off in such a just a rank way. And
I was still, I told you I knew something was gonna happen. I was still shocked when Tommy goes, y'all. He's like, you all look like you've heard of us before. And then one of them shoots Joel in the leg. I was like, oh no! I freaked out.
And what I was getting at too with the playing as Abby though is, and even after that whole scene with Joel, it's just a testament to the team at Naughty Dog, and I recently played through A Thief's End as per your recommendation, Uncharted 4, which I know Druckmann and a lot of the same people worked on this game. Yeah. I trust them. So that was just the thing for me. I know, granted, we've had time to grow up a little bit, but obviously there's going to be people out there who are going to be babies about everything. I was a baby about The Last Jedi in some ways, and I'm embarrassed about that, looking back on it now.
I don't think you're a baby. The Star Wars is, like I said, man, that's a wild card.
Yeah, it's different. It's different. But the thing is, it is a shame that all these people are going to write the game off without even playing it, not knowing what they're missing. Because in my mind, though, I was like, why wouldn't you trust these guys? That's why I wasn't paying attention to any reviews or anything for this game. I didn't even watch the trailer for this game before I played it. I didn't even watch the trailer. I watched, there was a short clip that came out I think at E3 2 years ago. That's the only thing I saw, because I was like, I don't need to see anything else. I'm going to buy The Last of Us Part 2. The anything by these guys, they've earned my trust entirely. Yeah. So I knew that they were going to take me on an adventure. And man, movies have a long way to catch up to what they were able to accomplish in this game.
I think and Watchmen has come up multiple times in this, and that's the example I always look to in terms of one of the best, at least one of the earliest forms of a creator saying, I'm going to do something with my medium that can't be done in other mediums, and at least in the same way. That's what Alan Moore was doing with Watchmen, which is why it's always been hilarious that they tried to make it into a movie, and they did make it into a movie, and it's not a bad movie. I think it's mostly a good movie, but it's got its problems, and part of its problems stem from the fact that it's a movie and that it's not,
it's just a direct retelling of it's like the script is pretty much just ripped right off the page.
Yeah, and in a weird way, the more cuts they did and the longer the movie got, the better and worse it got at the same time, because in some ways it got better because they were able to flesh stuff out, but then worse because it works less and less as a movie. And it's just always made that whole thing interesting with how Moore approached writing the comic. I think, and I definitely, I know there's a lot of people that hate Druckmann right now. I really like him, and in terms of,
why do people hate him? Why don't people? Is it because of what he did in this?
I think people disliked him some before this too, is the vibe I've gotten. I don't fully know. It's one of those things where this has happened to me with other creators where I've been like, I don't really get why people hate this guy so much, but I've liked that person's work.
I tried to tell you, David, Roman Polanski is a pedophile. You need to stop saying that you love everything about Polanski.
It's nothing like that. He's never done, as far as I know, he's never done it. Yeah. I think people I don't know. I think some people get a vibe that he's pretentious, or that he thinks that he's making the best stuff ever. I've never gotten that vibe from him.
Well, he is.
I mean,
he is though.
I think that it's possible to think that and it be true. I think like there's plenty of musicians that are like so arrogant, but also they're as great as they think that they are. So it can work. But I don't know. I think with Druckmann, either way, whether you like him or don't like him, one of the things I really do like about him is that he and his team, in the first game he was co-directed with Bruce Straley, and then in this game there were multiple co-directors and Haley Gross was his co-writer. Like, there's a lot of people that go into these games, and that's important to say. I know we keep saying Druckmann, but it's a ton of people. They know that they're making a game. And that's one of the things that's so great about the podcast is they go into this sort of stuff all the time. So specifically the idea of like the first game, when you go in and get Ellie at the end, you have to kill the first guy, which is crazy playing this game now because that's Abby's dad. The other two in there, you don't have to, but you can. And when I played the game the first time, I killed those guys immediately.
Yeah, as quick as possible.
When I talked to my friend Austin, he was like, "Oh, those guys were innocent. I didn't kill them." So there's stuff that they add in there that specifically shape the way you play the game or can play the game while still maintaining a narrative and characters, not betraying the characters, because it's not an MMO or something where you're making your own character. It's a character you're controlling, but they are working with their medium in a way that other mediums can't have. So you can't feel, you can feel some of the same emotions when you watch a movie or when you read a novel. And we love all of these other mediums. I don't think we're saying that, obviously, but there's something about playing a lot of the moments in this game and actually inhabiting that through, as they call it, through the analog sticks, that is so completely different and hits you, I think helps enhance and hit you in such an emotional way. That's one of the things that I've been really fascinated by lately. Tim Rogers, who used to write for Kotaku, he's solo now, or he's on a different site, and he did a 2.5 hour review of The Last of Us 1. Tim Rogers is a journalist who, the first time I heard his reviews on YouTube, I absolutely hated him. I thought he was so annoying, and I've grown to absolutely love him now. He's like just crazy detail. He's like a maniac in terms of how far he digs into stuff, and he has a very specific style that can be off-putting too. So if you hate him right away, give him a little bit longer. Maybe don't start with the 2.5 hour Last of Us review, but if you do get into him,
what's his name again?
Tim Rogers, Rogers. But that review, if anybody does get into him, is a great one, and he talks a lot about the design of the game and how the game functions and how the design of the gameplay itself mirrors the narrative themes of the game. And that's one of the things I love about Druckmann and those guys, to your point, is that it's a story made for video games. And one of the things that I mentioned earlier, there was drama with people involved with the game. Jason Schreier, who also used to be at Kotaku, he tweeted something like, "Video games are way too long now," or something like that. It was broad, and he was talking about Last of Us 2, which as a whole, well, he wasn't only talking about Last of Us 2, but that tweet spawned that idea. Now, for some context, he is a reporter who has reported extensively and exposed a lot of studios that have had insane levels of crunch for their teams, where people have been like severely mistreated, and I think in that aspect he's a great journalist. So his perspective is coming from the side of like Sony and these other companies and these big studios. They're trying to justify the price tags in their games that are making these people work so much and under strenuous circumstances to pad out games sometimes. He didn't mean specifically Last of Us in this situation. He was just making a blanket thing. Well, that pissed everybody off. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people. Troy Baker quote tweeted, Troy Baker voices Joel, quote tweeted that one with this like crazy long quote from Teddy Roosevelt about how like critics essentially don't matter. Like it was this whole crazy thing and all this drama and everything else. But that's one of the things that at first I had to get used to, is because this is a game that like even if you're watching a miniseries, what miniseries are you going to watch that's 30 hours long? Like that's so long. And especially nowadays, like, you know, prestige TV or whatever you want to call it is, you know, 8 to 10 episode seasons. And each of those are about an hour long, sometimes half an hour. So that is one thing that I thought about a lot while playing this game. And at first was kind of my only negative that I had was like how it's paced. But then the more I played it and the more I got all of it and the more I kind of looked at how the game was constructed, I was like, okay, that's not really a negative, because they have to pace it this particular way for it to work. Yeah. But it's also a weird thing because you are in control of how much you played or don't play it too. So
exactly.
It's not like you're watching an episode. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're totally in control of how much you're going to be exploring and everything. And I was going crazy. I think I clocked in at about 30 hours was when where I beat it. But I was trying to find everything because like the one other thing that we haven't even mentioned yet is like how this is without a doubt the most gorgeous video game out right now. Oh yeah. Like that we have
It'll
available
be the best PS4 game for sure. And part of that is just because it came out at the end of the life cycle. But even if I would say they'd have a good 6 months until a better looking game comes out.
Yeah,
like
but everything, like literally, not even just the way that it looks, down to the sound design. Like even in the first one, the clickers were genuinely terrifying because of the sounds that they make, and they amped that up in this one, I thought. And like I played a lot of it with a headset on so that I could get the full experience and like hear them like kind of coming up behind you and everything. And man, I was genuinely scared playing this game, and like that rarely happens. I know you talked about this on a recent episode, but it's so much easier actually for a video game to scare me than a movie these days.
Oh, a million times more for me.
Yeah, but also that's just saying, like, that just goes to show though how much better video games are getting, because like the ones that come to mind are like, for me, the Resident Evil 2 remake was genuinely creepy at times.
Yeah.
I haven't played the third one yet. I know you played through that. I want to, but this one, man.
I've just been playing. I played the second one. I'm almost done with the second one.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you were playing the third one. No. This one is it's genuinely terrifying in moments, but we haven't mentioned like actually no, this is something we got to address because we're 42 minutes into this and we haven't talked about like, so the world is pissed off about Ellie and Dina. Is that's a real thing?
Some of it is. Some of it I don't know because it's easy to know which places to avoid.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's it. Like, I know I'm not trying to be the whole holier than thou thing or bit some kind of all that bullshit, but like I that didn't even cross my mind. But also, I thought they kind of established that Ellie was gay in the first game.
They establish it in Left Behind, which is the DLC for the first game.
Right.
So it's possible that someone didn't play it, I guess, and was like, "What? She's gay?" But I mean, obviously that person's just in the wrong if they have a problem with that. But I think that it was similar to like Gamergate, Comicsgate sort of crap, where it's like, oh, you're pushing your woke SJW liberal.
Thor's not a girl.
Yeah, like in values into my game. So like. Anita Sarkeesian was a feminist speaker. I don't fully know all the stuff she does. That was the target of Comicsgate, and I think Druckmann has mentioned her in a speech that he did one time, and maybe is friendly with her. So people were trying to say that she was heavily involved with making the game, more progressive, and that it was just them pushing agendas and stuff like that. So I think the Abby Dina stuff, to a degree, was probably some of it. There were also people, like I mentioned earlier, that were just mad that Abby wasn't like your normal quote unquote hot chick, gamer character. And then the Lev stuff, the trans stuff, I guess people were mad about, which I don't know, man. Like I just have no perspective for like people that are upset about something like that at this point. Like I grew up conservative Christian. Like my dad was a pastor and my parents were missionaries in Brazil. Like, they weren't the most, super far right conservative Christians ever, but we were conservative. Like I grew up being taught, just in general, not my parents weren't sitting down teaching me hatred necessarily, but I grew up being taught and believing like homosexuality is a sin and abortion is a sin and like all that kind of stuff. So I understand the role for a lot of people that religion plays. And I'm not saying it's right. I think it's absolutely wrong. I have a lot more sort of understanding than I think a lot of people do. Not just me, but people that have grown up with organized religion and know like how controlling of a force that can be. But man, it's harder and harder for me now in 2020 to give any sort of leeway to people other than just to be like, my only hope is that this is going to die with you. Like you're on the wrong side of history and years late. So like, okay, like be mad, I guess but you're wasting your time and this, you're not going to beat this. Like there are trans people, there are gay people, like that's normal and that's fine. If you disagree with it, that's your problem and you're bigoted and wrong for that. I don't know. I thought Lev was a great character. Like I
thought they all were.
Yeah. And there was some, I guess this one I struggled with a little bit more, but I don't admittedly know a lot about trans culture in terms of what's right or wrong. But there was some controversy in the whole idea that in the game he's dead named, which is a phrase that I learned relatively recently, which is the idea of using calling a trans person by their, I guess, previous name before they transitioned or came out or whatever. And that happens in the game when you come up against some Seraphites and they call Lev Lily, I think is the name. Yeah. And that's how you, the player, and Abby find out what's going on, with them being, leaving the Seraphites or whatever, or what are they called? The Scars, as she calls them.
Yeah, Scars, yeah.
And that one is tougher for me because I don't know. I feel like that was necessary in the game in terms of you seeing the hatred and bigotry of the Seraphites and their religion. But I've seen some people say that it was wrong of them to dead name his character. I don't know enough about trans culture to know if that's right or wrong. If you're trying to show something's wrong, do you do that? Or
I think neither you or I are the type of people we're not the ones to answer that question.
We're two straight white guys.
Yeah. So. Debatably, we bend it a little bit with each other. But.
True. So I don't know. But yeah, I think I think that was one of the few different pieces of, and that stuff's easy to write off. For me, I'm just like, okay, if that's what you don't like about the game, then there's probably a lot of stuff you don't like, and there's probably a lot bigger problems that you have in life.
Yeah, exactly. You're struggling with some major shit.
One thing that's interesting to me is thinking about how there were probably a lot of people with the first game that loved the first game and loved the gameplay and loved the story. And then the ending of the first game, which has Joel lying to Ellie and saying, that there was no cure and they couldn't find it or blah, blah, blah. And he lies to her. And it's a crazy, like, cherry on top moment of this great game that you just played that you're then forced to sit in some like really uncomfortable stuff, roll credits, like, far and away one of the things that I think those of us that love the first game and the critics that lauded the first game mentioned, that's a big part of it. I think it's made me wonder how many people played that first game, got to that ending, and were like, okay, yeah, whatever. He saved her. He lied to her. That I'm done with the game now. And then that sort of like moral ambiguity and that like character depth and thematic depth and everything else then becomes Last of Us Part 2 from beginning to end. They didn't know how to handle that. And they just wanted to play a game where it was kind of like the first game, where they had to go somewhere and fight infected and fight bandits and then get revenge.
With some cool storyline along the way, but they didn't want to actually have questions thrown at them where you have to ask yourself those questions. Yeah, I totally agree.
And I think that's the way I've been trying to look at it, as opposed to, being like, oh, well, they just clearly don't appreciate, good storytelling, which is the easy thing for me to look at. But different people want different stuff out of games, and it makes me wonder how many people had that experience where they just wanted that sort of A to Z thing like the first game, which it's a great game and the first game works for that. But I think it was so cool and interesting to play this game and realize it's not even like they made a sequel. They just, like you said earlier, they told the second half of the story. And maybe the middle third. I mean,
yeah, there's got to be more. There's got to be more because, and that's what I was kind of getting at before too, is that like I didn't want a second one, but now I need a third one.
I'm kind of in the same place I was with the first one, but also 100% open to a third one, which I wasn't 100%. If you would have asked me with the first one, I would have been like, no, play it. That's it. Let it be done. Like, make another Uncharted. Like, those games are super fun, and those can kind of just go on forever. They don't need to be, even if you switch the characters up, like you can have that gameplay and still do it over and over again.
Totally.
But yeah,
do you have any theories? Do you have any theories about where she's going?
For whatever reason, and I've had a very take sheltery sort of thing happen, which I know you love that movie too. So, where I had a very strong idea when I finished it the first time. I haven't played the whole game through a second time, but already even now thinking about it, my idea has kind of changed. When I finished the game, for whatever reason, I don't really know why. It almost seems silly now. I felt very much I felt very optimistic that she was going to be able to go back to Dina and be with her. And I don't know if that's because I wanted her to be with Dina and I wanted her to go back and be with JJ and felt like Dina would take her back now that she was definitely done. I don't know if I just felt like I needed hope in that moment with how the game ended. The more I've thought about it now, the more I'm like, man, I don't know. Maybe she's walking out. Like, she leaves all of her stuff. So maybe it's a situation where like a dog walks out in the woods to die, like how animals will do that. Like, I had a more pessimistic view of how it goes.
Mine's pretty pessimistic.
Yeah, I don't. They definitely leave it open to interpretation. So there's I don't think there's a wrong answer, but
I personally feel that, and this is 100% a ballpark guess, but like I personally feel, especially with her leaving everything, like you mentioned, that she's the third one, like a story that they could explore is her going to sacrifice herself to try and find a doctor to do the procedure to extract a cure.
It's a good thing. Because they say that Abby's dad was basically the only one that could do that, but also
Abby's still alive.
They don't know everybody. Yeah, well, and also you don't know everyone in the world. That everyone in the U.S. Like, obviously, most of the population has died, but we don't know everything everywhere.
Well, if we know anything about you Americans, you only think about yourselves. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't think there was, and in fact, it wasn't until about 10 minutes ago. Isn't today your guys' like 4th of July?
No, today is like Canada Day. Yeah,
I didn't know that until seriously like 10 minutes ago, which made me laugh for that exact reason. It was like, man, I'm so American. For me, it's like 3 days before 4th of July, not Canada Day. So
yeah, and then for me, I'm like planning. I'm just so excited to watch Jaws on the 4th of July because I always celebrate with my American brothers and sisters. But I guess we'll fuck ourselves. But no, yeah, I'm very interested to see where they could possibly go with the story. I feel like there's definitely more to be told, and they've proven that they have more in the tank. Because I had no idea that they had that. Like, man, also what I need to mention before we close up too is the deaths of like Manny and Jesse both shook me hard because they were so sudden.
Those are some like Jeremy Saulnier deaths.
Yes. Oh man. Yeah. Great analogy there. Yeah.
Just people like getting their faces blown off when you least expect it, like real crazy stuff.
Exactly.
Dude, and when Manny got killed, it took a while before I realized I was trying to catch up to Tommy. I did not piece that together at first. Might be
neither.
Pretty obvious. Yeah. Okay, good. I don't feel as dumb now. But when it finally got to it, I was like, oh crap! I forgot about Tommy running around during these 3 days, like killing people.
And he's a good sniper.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like they pieced it together so well. 2 quick things, and then I had one other thing I was going to mention. I'll do it fast because I know we're wrapping up. In terms of the ending, one thing that I thought about that I think could be cool is if they did a third one, if it was they're all about symmetry and mirroring and everything. If it jumped forward 20 years like the first game did, and Ellie's in it, but she's older and she's more of the Joel character from the first game. That's obviously something we've seen a lot in other stuff, which is why, while I think that idea is cool because I've seen it done in other stuff that's cool, I also would just prefer that Neil Druckmann and that team do whatever they want because it would be better than anything I could come up with.
Yeah.
But there's an Easter egg in Uncharted 4 at the very end. I won't say exactly how because it spoils literally the epilogue, but you've played it recently. When you're in that room, when when you're done playing Crash Bandicoot, there's a poster on the wall. Did you notice that for Last of Us?
I don't think so.
There's a poster on the wall in there that says The Last of Us, and then it has a girl with a gas mask on who's pregnant and she's holding a machete, and it's called like American Daughters, I think is the name of the subtitle or whatever. And Neil Druckmann talked about that on a podcast I heard recently where he said basically it wouldn't be the sequel, but it would be another story they want to tell in the universe, and maybe that would happen in another medium, maybe comics since he's done comics already, or it could happen in the new HBO series that they're making.
How do you feel about that?
He's involved, and it's HBO, and it's the Chernobyl guy, so optimistic.
And I do like the casting of Jamie Lannister as Joel.
I think that would be great. Yeah, it's and also what's her name from Unbelievable and Booksmart as Ellie, I think is pretty good too. But
wow, I did not know that.
That's the meme I saw was the side by side of Joel and Ellie, and then it was Jamie Lannister. Sorry, I had an alarm on my phone go off, and then crap, I can't remember her name now, but. The really quick, just I'll like bullet point a few other notes I wrote down. The museum sequence, we didn't talk about at all. Probably one of the best in the game. Like I openly wept at that scene where you put on the helmet and Joel has the tape for you and all that they kind of mimic the video game thing from Left Behind, which was amazing. One little detail that I really loved is that you can tell in flashbacks where you're at by Ellie's tattoo. I don't know if you noticed that. It'll be in different stages.
Yeah.
Like it'll have gout lines and the shading and stuff. There's one scene with Marlene in a flashback where they gave her depth that the first game wasn't able to give her as much of, where she's finding out that from Abby's dad that if they take that stuff out of her brain, it's going to kill her. And Marlene is disgusted with Abby's dad for how he's acting. And it was cool to see that because when you see her in the first game, you feel like she has empathy, but not as much as she should. And
she's still fighting. She's fighting Joel pretty hard on it.
Yeah, and then Joel kills her, which you feel conflicted, but at least for me, mostly good about in terms of him saving Ellie.
That's my girl.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And in this game, I liked that because it gave her more depth where it was like, okay, she was ultimately making the right decision, arguably, but she also felt like garbage about it. And I felt like that was a cool moment for her. And then... let's see. I mentioned that already. I mentioned the PTSD. Okay, this was one of my favorite moments in the game, and I'm wondering if you got to this too. This is a totally little side, like questy kind of thing that happened in the game for me. When I was going around in Seattle, after the Seraphites had just started to kind of show up, I was playing as Ellie. I found one note that was talking about these people that were trying to break off and leave the wolves, and Isaac was picking up on the fact that they were trying to escape. Did you do this part?
Yes, I did. I think so.
Man, it was so cool.
Yeah.
And it was normally I don't play games well enough to pick up on stuff like this, and for whatever reason, this just worked for me. But you read these notes and you're like, we're meeting here and we're meeting there, and Isaac doesn't know, and we're gathering supplies and we need to hurry because you can kind of tell that Isaac, the guy who's leading the WLF, is at the very least sort of unhinged. And so you go up into this house, much like every other thing in the game, you're going through apartments scavenging. And I noticed, I don't know how or why I noticed this, but for whatever reason, I noticed there were plants in this apartment that were alive. And I don't mean plants like growing out of the walls. I mean like potted plants that were next to a window. And I remember thinking to myself, that's weird. Obviously those aren't getting watered. How are those alive? And there's a workbench, and there's one room in the apartment that's locked that you can't get into. And then there's a workbench in the living room, and you go over to the workbench like you've gone to every other workbench in the game, and it's the only time in the game that happens. You pull out your guns, which all those animations are great, by the way. And as you're pulling out your gun, you hear, and I have my headset on, you hear someone yelling and running at you. And it was one of the scariest moments.
Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, dude. That was fucking terrifying.
You get tackled, and there's 4 or 5 people in the apartment, and you have to fight them and kill them. And you do that. And you realize you go over and that door that was locked is open, and you realize those are the people that were trying to escape the WLF. They were all hiding in that room, and they were trying to attack you. And then you also kind of feel guilty, like a lot of other stuff in the game, because you were defending yourself, but that was those people. That was one of the best world building things I've seen in a video game in so long. And another moment where I immediately paused it and wrote it down to talk to you about, because I've been unable to talk about anybody or about this with anybody else. So. Yeah, I know I've talked way too much, and I apologize. And I'm sure listeners are tired of hearing me talk, but
no,
I'm glad you're just as excited about it as me, because this was great.
Yeah, man, it was just a fantastic game, and it was so cool being able to talk to you about it. And in particular, we got to do this more often, even if we're not recording. We got to just sit down and Skype each other sometime because, we don't get to talk in person enough, obviously, because since we've never done that before. But we'll talk in person someday. But thanks so much for coming on, man, and thank you for being excited about and preparing so much for it, because I think this was a really fun episode.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I totally agree. Thanks for having me on. This was great.
Awesome. Well, where can, if we have anyone listening who doesn't know about what you got going on, where can they follow you and what can they check out?
Sure. If you happen to make comic books and you need lettering or design, you can follow me on Twitter at DC_Hopkins, and my website is hopkinsletters.com. And you never know. I've gotten jobs from weirder places. So if that's what you do, I do that full time freelance. So I'll always take on the work. You mentioned EERIE International earlier. That's the horror podcast that I'm a part of with two other guys, one from the UK and one from Germany, Andy and Dave. And that comes out weekly. Diary of the Dead's our newest episode. And we plug you guys every week. Obviously, we're huge fans and friends of you guys. And I think that's pretty much it.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, thanks again. And we will see you all next time on The Terror Table.